How about this, John? The bottom 9, I've never seen us this bad in the NFL in terms of great teams and terrible teams. Here's the terrible teams. There are 9 of them. They've got 27 total wins. So in other words, you can do the math. 27 wins, 99 losses of those teams, of those 9 teams. We're talking about a lot of teams. There's the ones that are 2-12 and 3-10, all of the different numbers. They add up to something that looks pretty horrific. And as a matter of fact, one of the criticisms that I do have of the Vikings is they have played a lot of those teams that don't have very good scheduling, so you just don't know. And I'll even throw the 49ers in there, John, because when they played against the Niners, everybody thought they were the Niners, including myself. They're not. They've been hurt. They're not playing very well. They are on the fringe of maybe being a playoff team, but it's probably absolutely gone really at this point in time. But going a little bit forward, do you think this year there's only 2 quarterbacks scheduled to go in the first round? And are they going to be the first 2? Probably most likely, because the NFL is always going to do that. They're always going to go for the quarterback, which is the wrong position. You go for offensive linemen to protect a quarterback, and when you've done that, you get yourself into a spot. But the NFL, these GMs are idiots. They truly are. They just go for flash. So right now, I was looking at just about every site. Cam Ward is number 1. Shedeur Sanders, number 2. And the odd thing, John, is after that, there's no quarterbacks, but Colorado maybe should have had even a better record than they did, John, because the next guy is Travis Hunter, who we both know, he and Shedeur both played for Colorado. You got 2 guys in the top 3 picks. I would think that maybe you'd do a little bit better than they did. And that's not a shot at Dion. I'm just saying their record should have been a little bit better because they've had an opportunity. They paid a lot of players. They've got a lot of NFL guys that are now coaches there that are building that thing up. But when you look at the Giants, the Panthers, the Raiders, Jacksonville, Tennessee, Cleveland, Jets, Bears, there's a lot of really pathetic teams out there. The Bears, by the way, have 4 wins, so they're at the top of this chart of crappy teams. But what do you think, John, about this going forward? Are they going to do the right thing and start drafting the guys that they need to have and need to pay to be into the position to then get a quarterback? And when you do you maybe wait for the guys like Sam Darnold, who over these years finally gets to the right place? He's got 3 great receivers, a great tight end, and a damn good offensive line.
Well, LSU, I'll just give you those 3 letters, Pete, because you and I both know that that's receiver U. Mm-hmm. I mean, the best receivers in football play at LSU, period, full stop, end of story. Yeah. Now, tight ends are a different story. They have wideouts, and they run great patterns. They're fast, and they have good hands. Willie Gault, fast, not great hands. And I love Willie Gault. I love Willie Gault. He was right after my time with the Bears, Pete, and I've been with him at a lot of celebrity events, and he is a super nice guy. But, man, you look at an LSU receiver versus Willie Gault, and it's night and day in terms of, getting production done. And that's only because of Willie's hands. Nobody could run with the guy. But I think overall, Pete, if you're in a position to take those first 3, Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, or Travis Hunter, you take them. Whoever the team is, no matter if they need them or not, I take them. But everybody else, all the 29 other teams, they better be paying attention to what you just said about offensive linemen, what I just said about wide receivers, and then drop right down into defensive linemen. Because, with the linebackers, you've said it forever, but with linebackers playing at 220 pounds, you better have a 330-pound tackle, at least one of them, up front, or those linebackers are going to get blown off in 50 roller skates.
Yeah. And when you look at a lot of the teams this year, John, some of the very best quarterbacks, when you go through every one of them, they probably have a pretty good running back as well. So even though everybody doesn't want to credit the running backs, they probably should, because take a look at Philadelphia. Take a look at what's going on with Baltimore. I mean, you can go take a look at the Minnesota Vikings. Aaron Jones has had a great year. He's a very good running back, and he can run over guys or run around them. He's got speed enough to do that. So I think a lot of teams, are starting to look back, and maybe they're understanding that having a running back. Look at Detroit. They had the 2. Now they're down to the 1, but they still have the 1. So they're doing the right thing. And I give Dan Campbell all the credit in the world because he understands offense as good as any coach, whether people like to hear that or not. All right, John, how about the portal? Now, here's the problem. We've talked about NIL and the problems there, right? Does there need to be a salary cap for NIL? Abso-freaking-lutely. There's got to be, because they've got to figure out a way that the big can't continue to get even bigger because of NIL and the money that they've got. 20 million. Most everybody else has under 10 million. I don't know how fair that sounds to me. It doesn't sound that fair at all. So under the circumstances, they got to fix that. They also got to fix the portal, because what people don't know about the portal, John, is this. It opened up December 9th. It closes December 28th. Now, why wouldn't you push that back? Maybe it's January 1st through January 14th or January 20th. And here's why I say that. This year's a great example of why they didn't really think this out very well. Marshall had a phenomenal year this year. They were 10-3. They won 10 games. That's Randy Moss's old school, Marshall. And the problem is the coach took another job because he got an opportunity. He wanted to go to Southern Miss. He wants to go up to the next level. He goes to Southern Miss, right? Well, here's the problem with the portal. On December 9th, 29 guys jumped into the portal. Now, that's a bit of a problem for a 10-3 team that's going to go to a bowl game. They had to cancel going to the bowl game, John, the Independence Bowl where I played at. They had to cancel because 29 players are leaving the team. That's a problem. That's a huge problem, and they've got to get this figured out. It's one thing to have a couple players sit out. It's another for everybody to say, you know what, coach left. Hell, I'm going to find a new spot to go. And 29 players out of maybe 100 total, including walk-ons and everything. I mean, think about that. That is not a good picture, I don't think, for college football and how things are going. And by the way, they couldn't even find teams, John, because the problem is you've already got all the bowls taken care of. If you got the bowls taken care of, who's a 6-6 team left? Almost nobody. So you've got to start scraping and finding schools that actually don't even have a 500 record to try to fill this gap. I think that there's still a lot of problems out there with the portal and NIL.
Louisiana Tech replaced Marshall, right, for the Independence Bowl. They basically got tapped when Marshall couldn't fulfill because they don't have 29 of those players. And maybe a few others just said, hell with it, I'm not going to play anyway. And the betting line would be nil. There would be no betting line after you. And Pete, let's be real. It's about ratings too. Yep. And you get no ratings for a game with 29 players that are not playing. And instead you're lined up with, a bunch of guys that haven't played that year. Nobody knows. Could they knock somebody off? Sure, they could. But the betting line would have to be astronomically against them.
Yeah.
So do they need some sort of a cap? I agree with you. The answer is yes. And it needs to move. It doesn't need to be fixed. The NFL salary cap is not fixed. It's based on the TV revenue and all the rest. Maybe they need to take a percentage of the TV revenue, Pete, even though, of course, we're not talking about the players getting that through the NIL, but maybe as a percentage of that, nobody can raise over X percent because of they could at least peg it to something. I don't know what the correct thing is, but I'll throw it out there and say, peg it to TV revenue. And as that goes up, the salary cap goes up.
I love it. Yep. I think that's a good answer. And that's where I would go too. If I was in that position, I would say, hey, look, we got to do something because this isn't going to work for very long. And I think the same thing with this portal. They got to do something. I don't know how they do it, but to your point with Louisiana Tech, what a great call, right? You're right in the state of Louisiana already. So at least you'll have some people in the stands, hopefully, because there's nothing worse than those bowl games where you look at the stadium and it's like, it seats 50,000 and there might be 18,000 people there. It's like, holy crap, that don't look too good.
Yeah, that's when it all comes down to how well those teams travel, as they say, the fans.
Yep.